Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear brothers and sisters, Salamun Alaikum. Welcome to this first program of this series, which is entitled Wahhabism, a Critical Study. The subject matter of this whole program is about studying a sect which was founded some 200-300 years ago in Saudi Arabia, and due to vast resources that they have and they gained throughout history, as we shall see, they started a huge propaganda in Islamic world, and they have caused a huge divide among Muslims. And as we shall see, this new sect has advocated some kind of violence among Muslims, towards Muslims and otherwise, towards peoples of other religion, towards innocent people. And this has caused quite some controversy in Islamic world and outside that. What we shall do in this series of programs is that we shall have a brief look at their history. That will be the subject matter of today's program. And then we will try to study their fundamental views and criticize them and check whether these are consistent with the views advocated by Quran, the Book of God, the tradition of the Holy Prophet, and the tradition of Muslims throughout history. So, to present our program in a nutshell, I present this brief list of subjects. For today's program, I shall have a look at the history of Wahhabism. We'll look at the key figures of this sect and people who actually founded this sect in the history. Afterwards, in the following program, we will focus on one practical subject, namely their attitude towards other Muslims and towards other people. One key issue in this regard is that these people try to legitimize disrespect and violence among many other people, be it Muslim, non-Muslim, Christian, Jew, or people who do not believe in any religion. And in the following program, we shall delve into this subject and see whether this is what is advocated by Quran, by the tradition of the Prophet, and by what we see throughout the history. Afterwards, we will look at one of their main points of ideas, and namely we shall look at the issue of monotheism in worship and servitude. So we shall look at servitude and its meaning, and we shall criticize their standpoint in this regard and see that what they advocate as monotheism has nothing to do with the true meaning of monotheism and the true meaning of worshiping God and having servitude only towards God. Afterwards, we will look at their other criticisms and their other issues against other Muslims, namely the issue of paying visit to the graves, doing pilgrimage to the shrines of the righteous people, building shrines on their graves, asking for their help, asking for intercession, and so on. So we will take these issues, which are their main standpoints and their main points of criticism against other Muslims, and we shall answer them one by one and show that none of them is well-founded in the Quran and the tradition of the Prophet. So for today's program, I shall start with the key founder of this. As you know, the name Wahhabism comes from Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, who lived some 200-300 years ago in Arabia. However, before I start with Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, I would like to go slightly more back in history and have a look at another key figure which was very influential in the Wahhabi school of thought, namely Ibn Taymiyyah, Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. He lived in the 13th and 14th century, as you can see, and he has been a Hanbali scholar. You might know that Sunni school of jurisprudence is divided into 4 main schools, and Hanbali school is one of them. Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah's father was a renowned scholar in the Hanbali school of jurisprudence, and Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, who was born in Harran, which is a place currently in Turkey and near the Syrian border, attended his father's school and learned jurisprudence there. However, his views became little by little non-orthodox and very much different from his contemporary scholars. For example, he started to criticize logic, philosophy, Sufism, all kinds of mainstream ideas at that time were also criticized by him, apart from these ideas of philosophy and Sufism. But he also had his special ideas concerning monotheism. For example, he believed that God has hand, has feet, has all parts of body, as you can imagine, but we don't know how he actually is. So these controversial ideas resulted in putting him in jail and being rejected by many contemporary scholars of his time. So he spent much of his time in jail, but he was a very prolific author, so he wrote many different books, and many of his books served later on as main references for Wahhabis, who came a few centuries later. So he died in 1328 AD, but his ideas were carried by his pupil Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi. So let's go a few centuries further, where Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab came to being, and that's in 1703. He was born in Arabia, in Najd, in the middle of Saudi Arabian peninsula, currently Saudi Arabian peninsula. And so he was also from Hanbali school of thought, but he started very extremist ideas, and he went to Mecca and Medina, and after some time he started to gather some forces, make some coalitions with some heads of tribes, and attack other tribes and get some power and unite some more people around him. So he attacked other cities in Najd, as you can see here, and killed and sacked many people. They looted many different people. And finally he died in 1792. But this movement of Wahhabism did not stop. So these people who were gathered around Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab continued to loot more people, to gather more forces, to attack cities one by one. At some point they could get hold of some major cities. They were attacked by the Ottoman Empire's army. So they were defeated at some point, but at some stage, some 100 years later, they could get hold of Saudi Arabia and actually have a very influential political power, which resulted in the current regime in Saudi Arabia. Let's have a look at a few testimonials given by his brothers. It's very interesting to see that his father and his brother, who were Hanbali scholars of his time, were among his first opponents. So this is one interesting quote from Sulaiman bin Abdul Wahhab, who was the brother of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. He says, People are now afflicted by someone who associates himself with the book of God and the tradition of his prophet, and does not care about those who oppose him. Those who oppose him are considered by him as non-believers. So this is a very interesting quote which shows how Wahhabism got spread in the Arabian Peninsula, namely by legitimizing violence against others and considering other people non-believers first of all, and then legitimizing violence against non-believers and taking their properties, taking all their belongings, and even taking their children as slaves, and so on, as we shall see in the subsequent programs. Another interesting quote from his brother is as follows: "He does not possess any of the requirements for making scholarly judgments," which is called ijtihad in Arabic. He does not even have a tenth of any of them, but his words have been spread, has been spread among many ignorants. And then he finishes by saying, "Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un." We are all of God and we shall return to him. This is taken from a book called السواعق الإلهية في الرد على الوهابية, written by Sulaiman bin Abdul Wahhab, who was the brother of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. So, just to show you a few more pictures of this whole movement which went through the Arabian Peninsula and then spread in the Islamic world to some extent, let me quote a piece of history about their attack to Karbala. What they did is that they entered the city and killed the majority of its people. So they killed thousands and thousands of people there. And they did not end up there. They destroyed the dome of the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And what they did, they looted all the belongings and all the ornaments and jewelries and all the carpets and stuff like that, in order to get more power and get more wealth, actually. So this is one last quote about what they did in different places in the Islamic world when they were gaining power. The author of the book Miftahul Kirama, when he finishes the book, he writes, "This book was finished in the night of 9th of Ramadan in 1810, while the author was in fear and distress, because the Wahhabi tribe of Unayza have put Najaf and shrine of Hussein alayhi salam under siege." So when he was finishing the book, actually Najaf and Karbala were both under siege of Wahhabis. They have blocked the roads, looted all the pilgrims returning from the pilgrimage of 15th of Sha'ban, which is a very important pilgrimage, killed many of them, mostly Iranians, and it is said that they have killed up to 150 people at that particular point. So they did not actually finish there. They went on and on. They took different cities in the Islamic world of that time. They massacred many people in Medina in 1924. Thousands of people in Medina were killed in their attack to Medina. And finally they got hold of Medina, and they actually destroyed Jannatul Baqi', which was a very important cemetery, Islamic cemetery, with lots of shrines and domes and stuff like that. So if you read the diaries of people who traveled to Arabia before that time, they all write about the nice shrines which were built on the grave of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, for example, on the grave of Abbas, who was the uncle of the Prophet, and many other prominent people who were buried there. As you know, 4 of our Imams are buried in Baqi'. But all their shrines were destroyed by Wahhabis at that time. They even attempted to destroy the shrine of the Prophet when they attacked Medina, but there have been some discussions at that time which prevented them from it. Perhaps the king of Arabia at that time, who was a close ally of Wahhabis, prevented them from destroying the shrine of the Prophet. Well, the story does not stop there, as you know. We see throughout the history to the date that this ideology has caused so much violence against Muslims and against non-Muslims. What we shall do in the following program is that we shall look at the causes of this violence and these violences and see what makes this kind of violence in their view legitimate and try to criticize that. We shall see that this kind of violence is neither supported by Quran, nor by the tradition of the Prophet, nor by the tradition of the Muslims throughout the history. So neither Sunnis nor Shiis do support this kind of view, which is a very extremist and dangerous view. I would like to end up the discussion here and invite you to listen to the following and then have a look at the following program, which will be about this wave of violence and criticizing it. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.